All right, so looking at these properties. The first one, actually the first two, A and B. Can somebody give me those two properties? When you have a to the m times a to the n, what's that equal?
A to the mn.
Yeah, you're close, not quite. Close, Jack.
A to the n plus n.
There we go, a to the m plus n. And then letter B is going to be, when we're dividing, we're actually subtracting the exponents. So when you're multiplying, you're adding the exponents. When you're dividing, you're subtracting the exponents. So those would be the two properties with multiplying and dividing. The second two properties here, these are those power to a power property. So you have an exponent inside and on the outside. How about C and D? Anybody know what to do with C and D here to get those properties? What do you do with those powers?
You multiply them.
Yeah, these are the ones you multiply. So letter C would be M times R. So you're multiplying those two together. And then letter D, that R distributes to both exponents. So it's going to the powers. You're still multiplying them, but it would be A to the MR and B to the NR. So it's like distributing to the exponents inside. So if I had 5 different variables with different exponents, I'd be distributing to all of the exponents inside. Looking at letter E and F, Darby, what happens when you have a negative exponent?
You have to make it positive by putting it like on the denominator side of a fraction.
Yeah, what goes on top?
Just the number 1.
Perfect, just the number 1. Yeah, so our goal is to have positive exponents. That's when it's simplified. So positive exponents are simplified. So we put it under 1, we move it to the denominator, or you move it to the opposite place. If it is in the denominator and it has a negative exponent, then it bumps to the numerator. And then Darby, letter F, what would happen with that one?
You would distribute the negative 1 out, and then you would have to flip the A and B because
Exactly.
they both have a negative exponent.
So the exponent goes to both of them, and then as she said, because it's going to both, it is flipping, and it becomes B over A. So anything in parentheses is affected by the exponent, whether it's in fraction form or multiplication form. That exponent distributes as a power to the variables inside. So just going through, these first 3 look pretty straightforward. We have 2 parentheses here. That just shows you we have 2 expressions. When you're multiplying, you're going to multiply the numbers together. And then remember the property, the first one we talked about, you would add the exponents of the variables. So the actual whole numbers here, they get multiplied. You're not distributing, you're just multiplying the like terms together, the like pieces together. And then I would add the exponents. So I have x to the 4th and another x. So that makes 5 of them. And then we have y to the 7th. And that's all you do. So there's no like distributing or anything like that because there's no plus sign. You're just kind of matching up the like pieces of the expressions. So letter B, Peter, what will we do here with letter B? We've got a division.
So you divide the 42 by the -3, and that'd give you -14. And then for the m, it'd be 5 minus 3, so it's m to the 2nd. And then for the j, it'd be 2 minus 1, so it'd just leave you with 1j.
Right. So multiplying, you're multiplying the like pieces, dividing, or a quotient here, you're dividing those like pieces, and the exponents get subtracted with that division property. And then letter C goes along with our exponent property. Be really careful here. This exponent distributes to every exponent. So there are 4 different parts to this. It goes to the -2. It goes to the A, so there was a cube. I'm multiplying that by 3. The B really has a power of 1. And then the C has a 4. Multiplying it gives us 12. And I didn't multiply A. There we go. But that 2, be careful with that 2. The -2 is now cubed. So you're not multiplying -2 times 3, you're raising -2 to the third power. So this becomes 8a to the ninth b cubed c 12.
Wouldn't that be a -8?
Yep, thanks. And then the last one that looks pretty straightforward because the others have fractions. We have 5x to the 0, y to the 4th. There is a property. Cole, what happens when you have anything to the 0 power? We don't have that listed above as a property, but it is a property. What happens with that, Cole?
Isn't it just 1?
Yeah, it's just 1. So what would this become, Cole?
5y to the 4th.
Yep, that's it. So anything to the 0 power is 1. We could add that as an extra property if you wanted to. We could say a to the 0 equals 1. Any number to the 0 is equal to 1. So letter D, the x to the 0 goes away, and we just have 5y to the 4th. All right, so throwing in some fractions here. Can't always have whole numbers. Makes it more interesting to have fractions to work with. These are all the same variable. So we are going to add the exponents together. But what do you have to do to add those fractional exponents together? Peter, what do we have to do?
You have to get the least common denominator.
Yeah, what would that least common denominator be?
10.
10. So we need to get a least common denominator. This becomes -5/10. 1 is really 10 over 10. And then this guy over here becomes 4/10. So remember, fractions, you can't just add them together. You can multiply fractions, but adding and subtracting, you have to have common denominators. So look at that denominator, get a common denominator. And then Peter, when you add those together, now that they have a common denominator, we end up with x to the
9/10.
9/10, right? And you're keeping it like that. We're going to keep it as a fractional exponent. So we're not going to do anything changing it into a radical. We're working with exponents right now. So looking at letter D, this one looks kind of interesting. There's a negative exponent on the outside. And then we have a 9, an h to the -2/5, and a k to the 4/3 inside. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you could approach this. Kind of depends on what you want to do first. Does anybody have a suggestion as to where we could start?
Could distribute first.
Yeah, we could distribute first. That could be one step that we could do. When you're distributing, make sure you're distributing it to everything as an exponent. So the 9 now has an exponent of -3/2. Now remember, you're distributing, so you're multiplying these fractions together. If you need to do a little side work, you can. But we're taking -2/5 times -3/2. That's for the h. For the k variable, we're taking 4/3 times -3/2. So if you need to do a little side work there, you can. Darby, what would the exponent of the h become?
I haven't done the math.
I'm
One
sorry.
second.
Nope.
No, you're fine. I just have to.
And I'm talking fast. What's a little trick with these fractions? So I have my fractions written to the side here because I want to kind of make sure that you're thinking about mental math here. So when you have fractions and you're multiplying, you can cross cancel out the like terms, they're the like pieces. So I can cancel the 2's and then they're gone. And on the top, I have a negative and a -3, so that becomes a 3. And the bottom, I just have a 5. So you can simplify these fractions by cross-canceling. Or you could multiply and then reduce as well in your head. But I think if there's things that can cancel diagonally, cancel those. So if we look at the k term, if I do that same thing, I have a 2. It can cancel with the 4. We have a 3, and the 3 can cancel. And then we are left with a negative sign and a 2. So that becomes a -2. So be careful with the fractions. Do some side work. Don't rely on a calculator. All right, so that's step one. Now we have some fractions and some exponents that are negative. So Parker, what will we do with the exponents that are negative?
Wouldn't you just flip it to the denominator?
Yeah, we just flip it to the denominator. Which one stays in the numerator?
Coefficient?
Which variable is going to remain in the numerator on the top?
H, I think
Yeah,
only H.
yep, that's right. So h to the 3/5 stays on the top. 9 to the 3/2 moves to the bottom. K to the -2 moves to the bottom. All right, so we still have a 9 to the 3/2, and because it's a numerical value, that can be simplified. This goes back last year to Evil Chapter 6. So if you remember last year in Chapter 6, it was like probably the most difficult chapter we did last year. We worked with rational exponents. Does anybody remember, without using a calculator, how you would change 9 to the 3/2? Peter, do you remember?
It would be square root of 9 to the third.
Yeah, so 9 to the 3/2, the denominator becomes the radical. So it's a 2, so it's a square root. The numerator is the exponent. It remains as the exponent. So Peter, the square root of 9 is?
3.
And then you're taking 3 cubed, and 3 cubed becomes?
27.
27. So it's like a two-step process there. So you take the square root of 9, that's the denominator part, the 3/2, that 2 on the bottom. So that's saying we take a square root. And then after you take the square root of 9, you still have that cubed left. So 3 cubed becomes 27. So that was definitely a more difficult problem than the first 5 that we've done. You had to work with fractions. I threw a number of a 9 in there to get you to think about how to work through that 9. I do want to see a little bit of rewriting that exponent so I can kind of see that you're thinking about that and not just plugging it into a calculator. If we look, there are 3 more problems down here. And just like we did letter F, we can distribute first. Make sure you're distributing to all of those parts. And remember, you're multiplying those exponents together. So if you need to have a little scratch work for the y, we're taking -2/3 times -3/4. For the z, we have -4 times -3/4. Does anybody know what the exponent of the y variable would be?
1/2.
Peter?
Grant said it.
Grant, sorry,
1/2.
Grant.
Sorry.
Okay, nope, it's okay, Grant. What'd
Grant,
you
you're
say?
good.
Did you say something? Grant, what do you have?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I said it. Oh, 1/2.
1/2, okay. And Grant, what do you have for z?
I'm not done with Z yet, but
Okay,
I was still working on it.
that's all right. Peter, what do you have for z? Parker, I'm
I have
sorry.
3.
No, it's okay. I'll get you next time, Parker. I'm sorry. Peter, what'd you say?
3.
3. All right. Any other simplifying we can do? Parker, any other simplifying we can do?
Yeah, you can switch the x to 3/4 to the
Okay.
denominator.
And that's the only thing that moves because it's the only piece that has a negative exponent. That y to the 1/2 stays on the top. So y to the 1/2, x moves to the bottom, and z remains where it is because, again, it has a positive exponent. You're allowed to separate variables. They can separate if one has a negative exponent. They're not glued together. Any questions? All right, so it looks like H and I, the last two problems here, are similar to the ones that we've just done. I'll give you a little bit here, see if you can kind of work through them. Letter H, you can choose to distribute first, or you could choose to work inside the parentheses and simplify first. It kind of is up to you how you choose to think about where to start the problem. These are some good math skills here, multiplying fractions. Hopefully you're using some mental math and not relying on that calculator. Jenny, you might not be done, but can you tell me how you started letter H?
I distributed
Okay,
and I did cross canceled. So 5/2 and 2/3 gets you 5/3. And then -3/1 times 2/3 would get you -2.
good, nice.
And then that would leave you with, oh, I forgot to multiply the bottom part.
That's okay. You
But
can do it now.
you would cross cancel the 2's and that would leave you with -1/3.
Perfect, nice job. So looking at what we have left, this one has a negative exponent, so I'm going to move the d to the bottom. The c has a negative exponent, so that gets moved to the top. Jenny, what is 5/3 plus 1/3?
6/3, which can be reduced to 2.
Nice. So we end up with c squared over d squared. So it looked like a mess when we started with it, and now we have whole number exponents. So c squared over d squared. Remember, you're adding these exponents, no longer multiplying. So we add those exponents because the variables are being multiplied. Parker, question?
No, I just wanted to do the next one.
Oh, good, perfect. Love it. What do you have, Parker?
All right, so I took all the exponents and put them to a sixth. So b, I took that and made it 9/6, the first one, and then the next one I made -4/6. And I multiplied the first two,
Okay,
which got b to the 5/6.
good. So
And then it's just equal to 1 after that.
nice. Anybody else get one? Hopefully. All right, so that's all for today. Can you give me a thumbs up if you feel okay with the problems? Perfect, good. Okay. I don't have any other notes, and it's 10:25, so you have about 15 minutes. Your homework is a worksheet identical to this. Yes, there are going to be some evil fractions. I don't think there are a lot of evil fractions in it. Not as many, maybe 3 or 4. right? 3. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Only 3 problems with evil fractions. So that worksheet, it is just practicing exponents, trying to find it. Is there 12 questions on it? 18. Okay, 18 questions, but it looks like some of them are pretty darn easy. So you can choose to stay on and ask me other questions that you have, or you are free to log off and work on these problems. Go get a drink, go get a coffee, whatever you need to do, take a lap around your house. But I will be here for the next 15 minutes hanging out. If you need me, you can always pop back on too. Any
Miss
questions?
Kane,
Yes, sir.
did you post the worksheet yet or not yet?
Ooh, I can change it. It might not be posted yet.
Yeah, it is not posted.
It's not posted yet. Okay, well, let me go in and change it. I may have had it posted for maybe 10:30. It's 10:30. Let me see if I can get it to come out earlier. All right, it should come out within the next minute. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yep, I'm sorry. And I can show you that worksheet so that, there you go. This is what it looks like. You can see how those first 4 problems are pretty straightforward. I apologize that it's not wasn't posted for a little earlier. I'll make sure that next time there's more time when it comes up. It should be released in like any moment now.